Yeah. I just wanted to be one of the Strokes. Now look at the mess you made me make. Hitchhiking with a monogram suitcase, miles away from any half-useful imaginary highway. I'm a big name in deep space. Ask your mates, but golden ball's in bad shape. I found out the hard way that here ain't no place for dolls like you and me. Everybody's on a barge floating down the endless stream of great TV. 1984, 2019, maybe I was a little too wild in the 70s. Rocket ship grease down the cracks of my knuckles, karate bandana, warp speed chic, hair down to there, impressive mustache. Love came in a bottom with a twist off card. Let's all have a swig and do a hot lob. So who you gonna call? The Martini Police. Baby, that isn't how they look tonight. Oh no, it took the light forever to get to your eyes. I just wanted to be one of those ghosts you thought that you could forget, and then I haunt you via the rear view mirror on a long drive from the backseat. But it's alright, 'cause you love me and you recognize that it ain't how it should be. Your eyes are heavy and the weather's getting ugly, so pull over, I know the place. Don't you know an apparition is a cheap day? What exactly is it you've been drinking these days? Jukebox in the corner, long hot summer. They got a film up on the wall and it's dark enough to dance. What do you mean you've never seen Blade Runner? Oh, maybe I was a little too wild in the 70s. Back down to earth with a long simmer shimmer. Elevator down to my make-believe residency. From the honeymoon suite, 2 shows a day, 4 nights a week. Easy money. So who you gonna call? The Martini Police. So who you gonna call? The Martini Police. Oh, baby, that isn't how they look tonight. It took the line absolutely forever to get to your eyes. And as we gaze skyward, ain't it darker lit? It's the star treatment. Yeah, as we gaze skyward, ain't it darker lit? It's the star treatment. Ooh. It's the star treatment. Come on, everybody. The star treatment. Yeah. now. Oh, darling, have you started feeling old yet? Well, don't worry, I'm sure that you're still breaking hearts with the efficiency that only youth can harness. Do you still think love is a laser quest? Or do you take it all more seriously? I've tried to ask you this in some daydreams that I've had, but you're always busy being make-believe. Do you look into the mirror to remind yourself you're there? Or have somebody's good enough kisses got that covered? I'm not being honest, I'd pretend that you were just some lover. I can't think of her without thinking of you. I doubt that comes as a surprise. And I can't think of anything to dream about. I can't find anything to hide. When I'm hanging on by the rings around my eyes, and I convince myself I need another. One minute it gets easier to pretend that you are just some lover. When I'm popping slippers and a rocking chair, singing dreadful songs about summer, like this one. Well, I found a better method of pretending you were just some lover. Well, I found a better method of pretending you were just some lover. I'm not the kind of fool who's gonna sit and sing to you about stars, girl. Last night I looked up into the dark half of the blue, and they'd gone backwards. Something in your magnetism must have pissed them off, forcing them to get an early night. I've been searching from the bottom to the top for such a sign as the one I caught when I saw your fingers dim in the light, like you're used to being told that you're trouble. And I I've spent all night stuck on the puzzle. Nobody I asked knew how he came to be the one to whom you surrender. Any man who wasn't led away into the other room stood pretending. Something in your magnetism hadn't just made him drop whoever's hand it was that he was holding. I've been searching from the bottom to the top for such a sign as the one I caught when I saw your fingers dim in the light, like you're used to being told it your trouble. And I've spent all night stuck on the puzzle. I've tried to swim to the side. My feet got caught in the middle, and I thought I'd seen the light, but oh no, I was just stuck on the puzzle. Stuck on the puzzle. Hello and welcome everybody to the 6 Pixels Under podcast. I am Nerd Slayer, your host, or NS, or Justin, whatever you prefer to call me. I'm a little bit under the weather. I'm feeling better, but I got really congested probably like Tuesday. And then I felt it pretty heavily yesterday, so I pretty much just rested, besides just going to the gym and hitting a bag. But I took it easy, especially how I normally take it. So anyway, the Halo video just released, so I was hoping to get some talks and questions about that. And I was actually thinking of doing kind of like a live reaction of it. I want everyone to, of course, watch it on their own time, or at least open up the video at the same time as I'm watching it. So, because I don't get the views if you're watching it through the stream, but I thought it'd be something that'd be cool to do because it just happened to launch right as I was about to stream. Because there was no noon training class today in my gym, so it means that I'm not going to train, so I'm taking it easy. So here I am. My camera's a little bit off right now. How do I fix that? Okay, there it goes. Okay, cool. How's it going, everybody? I know it's been a minute. We're only a day off of what we normally have been streaming, but we've been normally streaming every Wednesday. So the video just came out, and I'm sure a lot of people are still reacting to it. So I'll give people some time to get their questions in, and I'll just talk about kind of what I've been going through normally. But yeah, I wanted to do kind of like a live reaction. We'll pause it every now and then, talk about some aspects. How's it going, Magister, Scraxel, Cosmonaut, Des, Babyface, singing intro? Yeah, appreciate it. What made you become a meme slayer? Well, I'm pretty sure I've talked about it before, but I mean, I grew up in the internet. Like, a lot of people like talk about growing up on the internet, but I actually grew up on the internet. Like, I learned how to socialize on the internet. I learned how to make friends on the internet. I learned how to sell things on the internet. I learned business on the internet. I learned computers on the internet, of course, but also how to make them and build them, which I did when I was like 13, 14. So all of that was because of the internet. So yeah, like back then, for people that didn't grow up during that age, you know, there's a lot of like back in my day in every kind of like facet, and I get that it's always going to sound kind of silly. To put but to put it into like true context, the reason why the internet early on was so like different was because it was very Wild West, which made it very bad in some ways, but it also made it very good because it was very raw. It wasn't about agenda or narrative yet as much. It was like places that people went and were kind of just talking about whatever hyper specific things they were talking about, because general chat groups weren't really a thing as much. Like they weren't as popular as they would be now. Like general topics weren't getting talked about as much. So part of it could have just been like you're speaking with people that are more like hyper focused and wanting to do specific things. But I think it's just the kind of people that were attracted to the internet early on were people that were maybe smart, or at least just couldn't fit into their direct environments. So because they went online when they were youngins, if you will, they kind of like learned how to socialize simultaneously as the world and the internet was kind of evolving. And I think this is kind of confusing because people would typically be like, yeah, but like social media is bigger now. How come people aren't more social? And I think that this is actually related to a video I'm going to make. And I'm not going to talk about the topic yet because it seems like sometimes I do a couple streams and I put my topics out there, and I've seen a couple of videos popping out from other YouTubers on the exact topic that I was talking about, which is cool. But it's also like, yeah, but I wanted to cover that. And anyway, not that I wouldn't still cover it, but so I'm not going to talk about the specific topic that I was going to cover. But I will say that like being social in an MMO and in a game in general is difficult to do if you don't understand what's going on. And that's both from the developer perspective and the player perspective. So as a kid, I was lucky enough to play these games that were very social minded. So I was able to be social playing them naturally, as you can imagine. So yeah, like being, you know, it's funny because back when I was into memes, if you will, we were doing You Laugh, You Loses. For people that were on the internet back then, you know what I'm talking about. YLs, like these were considered like essentially where you would post your memes. Pretty much the only place on the internet. So like posting your memes other places would be considered like silly or stupid or wouldn't make sense. So memes back then were very like hyper specific, like we were posting them only amongst other internet fans and friends. So it was like very insular, and it sounds very like cool, guys, but it wasn't that deep, guys. It was just like we were making stupid stuff and we just happened to be the only people that were paying attention. And then all of a sudden everything got popular and suddenly it was like memes became like an actual thing. I didn't even know what meme was. I thought people were messing with me when I first saw meme being mentioned. Because people were like, oh, memes and me. I was like, a meme? What the heck is a meme? Well, turns out that I was on the cusp of some weird, like, internet, you know, crazy thing that, like, yeah, back then we weren't even calling them memes. That's how I can tell if people come from back then, is if they know that we weren't calling them memes. We weren't. We didn't even have a name for them. We were just calling funny images thread. And back then, remember, it took a long time to load these threads because most of us didn't have the highest speed internet. So, like, what looking at funny images back then was actually like a big pastime. You see what I'm saying? Like, we spent a lot of time looking at images and looking at funny videos, and that came later, of course. But yeah, that was before memes were even a thing, which is so funny. Like, I sound so elitist when I talk about this stuff because it sounds back in my day, but it's like, no, but seriously, like, meme culture didn't exist. We were just posting stupid stuff online and like doing poop versions of things. You know what I'm saying? Like, who do you think wins, Sterling or O'Malley? That's actually a really good question, Pedro. Obviously, for those that know, I'm heavily into martial arts and fighting in general. And I actually have some footage up on my Instagram right now and Facebook of me hitting the bag. I'll show you guys later. But if you guys have never seen that, but it's a hard question. And it's a hard question because I've been one of those people that's always underestimated Sterling. And just because I kind of felt like his loss to Brian Caraway wasn't necessarily bad, but I thought that his gas tank was going to be a thing that was always there. Well, it turns out it isn't, and he managed to fix his gas tank problem. So it's hard to beat a guy that just never really gets tired and comes at you. And I think that like it was great watching him beat Peter Yan because people expected this to be a fight that, like, he would just get torched on the feet, especially because his entries looked kind of bad in the first fight. But I think he realized that instead of just forcing entries out in the open, he just made it a lot messier. And I think that actually made him do much better, including on the feet. And so I think that, like, Sterling is a lot smarter and has a higher fight IQ than he gets credit for. That being said, I think O'Malley is really tricky. And it's weird that to say this, but because, like, in the fighting game community and different, like, video games, a lot of the nerds in chat right now are, like, reacting to this like, why wouldn't people be more tricky? But, like, in fighting games, like, or in real life fighting, like, people aren't oftentimes tricky. It's actually something that's kind of hard to do because you're literally trying to trick somebody's brain with your actual human reactions. And that's hard to do because they're trained to see your reactions. You see what I'm saying? So it's like this kind of like bait and switch sort of thing. And so the reason why O'Malley is so impressive is because he can trick people physically through action, through movement. And that's really hard to do, but if you can do that and you have the power to back it up, which obviously he does because he's a knockout artist, then he's a really nasty striker. That being said, I do think that his grappling is going to get him in trouble in this fight. I think that's because he might be willing to grapple a little bit too much, and I think that that's going to bite him in the ass. We'll see, though. If he puts him out right, it's kind of like, it's the sugar show. Sorry, I put a holes in my mouth. Help with my throat. Luckily, it's not hurting, it's just itchy. Like, you know, like it's coming. Anyway, so let's react to the video then, since we don't have any other questions. Okay, everybody who's watching on stream right now, who hasn't already watched the video, go ahead and pull it up. Get ready. We're about to press play. In 3, 2, 1, play. Say it ain't so. Not only is that one of my favorite Weezer songs, I think it perfectly sets the tone for what to expect going into this special episode of the Death of a Game series, a series where we choose games or companies and diagnose the largest contributing reasons to the failures or the deaths of them. Halo is my favorite shooter franchise. It's not debatable for me. Halo taught me about fast-paced arena-like movement, competitive shooters, voice communication, custom lobbies, mods and glitches, and so much more. It is a part of my origin story as a gamer, and I have significantly played every single Halo, including Halo Wars, a spin-off RTS title in the Halo universe. Halo Infinite was the newest addition in the franchise, set to be the game's major return to the PC platform and have its 10-year-long reign from that point on. Halo Infinite, the first free-to-play open-world Halo game, would launch in December of 2021 and garner quite the popularity straight out of the gates, topping the Steam charts, a platform that had had some levels of success previously with the Halo MCC but was largely unknown on. What proceeded to happen after was arguably one of the biggest fumbles in video game history. Halo Infinite went from everyone's favorite new game to abandoned in the span of a year. And there are so many factors that led to that point, including pre-launch, during development, post-launch, and even still, now and more recently. With the entire Halo franchise in turmoil, and Halo Infinite seemingly unable to reclaim any of its initial glory, it felt like the perfect time to cover Halo Infinite on the series. Normally I ask the detectives watching to use their intuition and look for clues and evidence to connect the story of whatever case we're covering, in this case Halo Infinite. But this story in particular has so many clues and pieces of evidence it feels less like a mystery murder and more like a convoluted accident, laid bare for everyone to see. My hope is I can organize it all for you guys in a way that makes sense, including a breakdown of all of 343's involvement in the Halo franchise, which I find to be very important in telling the story. This is a special episode, personally, but also because of what it contains. This isn't just the death of Halo Infinite, we are covering detectives, we are covering a potential death of a franchise, at the hands of 343. And I knew that that was going to be dramatic, but it needs to be. Because it's true. The story of Halo Infinite has to be started with the holders of the franchise itself, following the exit and departure of Bungie from Microsoft and the Halo franchise. 343 Studios would be founded back in 2007, with the goal of being the new caretakers of the Halo franchise. The interesting part about the entire equation is that besides Microsoft handing off for the time the biggest shooter franchise to an unheralded development studio primarily known for the Halo Waypoint and animated series, was that 343 Studios didn't even have many original Halo developers. This is super interesting because most of the time that mergers happen, or exits happen, a good portion of the original talent will stay behind. But the majority of the talent at Bungie left and went on to create the Destiny franchise later on to great success. In fact, there are multiple pieces of media that state not only did 343 Studios have non-Halo developers, some of the higher profile ones didn't even necessarily like the franchise. It even was absolutely bizarre whenever it came out years ago, and is still bizarre in the context of the story. The transition was all but positive too, according to reports, especially when the only OG developer was indeed Frank O'Connor. Enter Frank O'Connor into the story. Oh yeah, this episode will have a breakdown of every major character involved in the story and their contributions or lack of. This is naturally based on what I know and reports that I have from my contacts. I believe it's important to hold developers accountable, especially in leadership positions. Frank O'Connor was the lone Bungie dev who stayed at 343 Studios. But interestingly enough, he wasn't actually a developer. At least not in the pure sense. He was a writer for a community section of their forum. And no, I'm not gatekeeping. I'm making people understand that he had no actual game development experience, which is problematic in Silicon Valley, and I have encountered this myself personally in the whole West Coast game development situation. I find it most interesting because in 2009, when 343 Studios began development on Halo 4, the next major Halo project without Bungie for the first time, they put Frank in a director position, which is quite the promotion. Now Halo 4 has tons of videos that talk about its development hell and problems. Like how they had this initial build that the team, including the game's lead director Josh Holmes, would turn down in favor of a different and more unique approach. You see, this fits with the theme of 343 Studios and their new vision of Halo, because they had a new vision. While they managed on their first attempt to make a Halo game feel Halo despite not having many Halo developers, but they had the help of Creative Assembly. But perhaps since the majority of the developers were not originally Halo developers or Halo fans, their second attempt at Halo 4 is what ended up bringing in the most hated changes and features that people ended up disliking. To put a bow on the Halo 4 story, and why it's incredibly relevant for this one, Halo Infinite, is because it set the tone for what was expected going forward for 343 and what kind of products they would create.
It makes sense to stop in cases like this. So for example, technically a chapter just started, or just ended, depending on your definition. And the chapter that I covered here, so I'll go into not what I covered because you guys can watch that in the video and you should be able to see that in the video on screen. But I will mention that I started at the very beginning of 343's journey because I found that the vast majority of videos that were out about Halo Infinite were only talking about Halo Infinite and weren't talking about it in the totality of 343 Studios. And the problem with that is that it's pretty much still the same exact suits, same exact leadership team. You get the whole nine, right? So it's almost like weird not to talk about the other games in the same context, because essentially you have the highest profile failure in Microsoft / Halo history. And yet we have failures before that, right? That we could look back and actually try to glean some sort of information from. So my idea, and I did this on my own just to go through my own process, and that's how I wanted to show the video, was that when going through the story of 343, I was like, you know what? You need to start at the very beginning. Here's a studio that was essentially handed the Rolls Royce, the fucking LeBron James, the, I don't know, think of the best brand for everything. The Logitech of peripherals, the fucking, the Alltech case, the Gigabyte Mobos. You know what I'm saying? Think of the Band-Aid, whatever name and brand is associated with a particular thing. Well, for console arena shooters, it was Halo. And Halo was always this weird game because it was friendly to arena shooters, but it wasn't really an arena shooter. And I always felt that way, trust me, because as a Halo player, I would go and play arena shooters, and people would always remind me, you don't play an arena shooter. And I'm like, I guess technically not really, right? Like, especially early on, Halo was not designed to be an arena shooter. And so anyway, like, with Halo 4, I wanted to start the story there because it's so interesting that everyone talks about 343 Studios and Halo and the different games and which Halo is the best and which Halo is the most Halo and which Halo is, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can hear me a bit better. Well, yeah, y'all just let me know if you need, if I should turn myself up or turn the video up. Yeah, that they had no original developers that worked on Bungie and Halo that stayed on the project. Now, to put that into context, most of the time you have a star team, you will have a coach who's coached other star players before. So they will have some level of experience in coaching for whatever type of sport you're doing. So for example, most famously, people talk about like the coach of the Lakers and the coach of the Bulls, and how he most famously was carried because he was always essentially really good friends with really popular and the best basketball players of the generation. Now, the thing is that despite that being the case, he was still able to go on and win his championships. Now, you might argue, well, he should. He had Michael Jordan, he had Kobe Bryant, he had Shaquille O'Neal. Fair enough. Now, imagine if he didn't. Imagine if for the next 10, 12 years, 15 years, he didn't even make it to the playoffs. What if suddenly now people don't even consider that program even serious anymore? People only watch you just to kind of see some fun things here and there. Well, that's what 343 Studios effectively did with the Halo franchise, is they took a franchise and somehow made it worse when it was already LeBron James at the time. So meaning the amount of protection that this game gets from its player base. Oh, sorry. Almost cut myself off. It's just bizarre. It's like, were you guys giving Miami Heat slack when they brought in the 3 championship level players and lost their first season? It's like nobody was. Everybody was making fun of them and mocking them because they had the talent. All they had to do was just show up, right? 343 Studios might have not had the original developers, but they knew them. They could have contacted them. They had contacts with Creative Assembly, who helped on the original Halo projects. They at least had some level of connection with that. Instead, they chose a different direction. And here comes Halo 4, the story of Halo 4. In the media, people disliked Halo 4, and specifically, they disliked many of the new changes, the visual style, and the overall direction of the story, which committed to many fans some really huge errors. But 343 employees and leaders like Josh Holmes and Frank O'Connor still to this day maintain Halo 4 was a success, just because it sold a lot, despite having the biggest drop-off in Halo population history. This gives you an idea of what kind of company and developers in leadership positions you are dealing with, where they still don't want to accept that their first attempt was a failure in the Halo franchise, and they want it to be seen as a success regardless. Now, before we get too deep into the timeline and story, I talked about being a mega Halo fan in the introduction, but I wanted to elaborate further. It both hopefully provides me some credibility in your eyes, but also validates my life and experiences, as Halo was and is very dear to me. Halo was the first time I ever played against other players online competitively, and it set the tone for my expectations and desires in that realm thereafter. I was playing Halo 1 at a single-digit age, and even played the PC version including the mods when I turned double digits. I even remember in computer science in high school, convincing my computer science teacher that it was part of my project. Halo 2 would change everything though. Unlike Halo 1, you didn't just need to join custom lobbies anymore, there was actual matchmaking, and I could play against players from all over the world. Halo 2 taught me how to improve at a video game. Okay, for reference, like, I wish there was a little bit of hyper music on this one, I'll be honest, but I think Tom's idea is that the video is so long you don't want people to get burnt out. But I will say that this little sequence right here, which is all of my gameplay, if you guys can't tell, is probably my favorite clip throughout the entire thing. And it actually showcases probably some of the most broken Halo 2 gameplay.
Halo 2 would change everything, though. Unlike Halo 1, you didn't just need to join custom lobbies anymore, there was actual matchmaking, and I could play against players from all over the world. Halo 2 taught me how to improve at video games, how to glitch and mod my Xbox, which I did by giving it some cool red rings, and furthered my love for game development. While I never achieved a high rank in Halo 2 due to lack of being able to even access Xbox Live in the first place, I was a very prolific modder and glitcher who was quite skilled due to my ability to BXR or double shot. Essentially, if you think about it, in the FGC.
Alright, so here's a little Easter egg. Because people think that like I'm only toxic because people give me criticism in the comments. I'm honestly just always toxic. Like it literally just is how I am as a person. It's just, I grew up that way and it's just entertaining to me. And obviously I'm talking about toxic in the friendly sense, not in the, you know, your family died, blah, blah, like whatever sense. But look at what I typed into chat. I typed in, LOL, make sure to run from me, LOL. The reason why I typed that is because I was BXRing everyone in the lobby. So at that point I was just telling them, I was like, hey, you guys probably should avoid running up to me. Just being cheeky. But yeah, no, I'm that guy.
Due to my ability to BXR or double shot. Essentially, if you think about it, in the FGC community or fighting game.
Okay, see now I'm reacting to my own clips here because
XR
I put some crazy clips in this damn video. Okay, so here's a clip where I BXB into a second BXB, which re-engages me into the lock-on. So people have this weird thing where they'll say about Halo Infinite. The reason why Halo Infinite sucks is because it has a lock-on on the melee. Halo had a lock-on in Halo 2 as well, and 3. It's way bigger in Halo 2. So that's, I mean, it means you've never played the Halos, like if you're saying that. Halo always had lock-on with melee. Anyone who mods or glitches or plays significant amounts can tell you that. But see, it causes me to lock onto him again. Notice how he doesn't actually take any damage. You don't see his shield actually pop. That's because I canceled the animation. And then I did it again,
you think about
so I could get behind him and I assassinated.
In the FGC community or fighting game terms, I was a lab kid. I just sat offline and practiced glitches until I went online and realized that BXR was OP, which was very funny and a fun thing to experience. Next is Halo.
So like the quick little story on that, and by the way, I'm going to put the video on 0.25 just because I'm breaking it down, so I also don't want to have to like take too much time doing it. Sorry guys, I don't feel that well. I don't hate my voice that much. I don't fast forward myself, but to go into detail there, like what Halo 2 was for me was like suddenly I got online and suddenly, oh, thank you for PKing me. I was, you know, a Halo 2 like grinder. I mean, lab kid in every sense of the word. Like imagine like fighting games, I was the Halo kid. And I nailed BXR, BXB, BYB, all the glitches that existed in the game. I couldn't afford online. But I was at my friend's house and I would play on his account sometimes. And I had no frame of reference for what BXR was. So it's just a funny concept because just imagine I had this like game-winning glitch that I was like a master at for some reason. And I went online and suddenly it was like the best thing in the entire game. So suddenly I was just BXRing and destroying everyone, and everyone was calling me a hacker and said I was a hacker and da-da-da-da-da. And so it was a really fun experience, like to recount personally going through that, because it was like I had no expectation of what BXB, BXR was and how good it was for the time. We were just messing around. We found out that you can animation cancel and just chained a bunch of things into it. Suddenly we realized, wow, you can cancel this with a BXR, which means that you can one-shot somebody because you can, right? And that was the birth of BXR. But yeah, for me, it wasn't like I was like, I'm gonna learn BXR double shotting because I'm a pro player. No, it literally was just like, this is fun, you know, because I was a prepubescent kid.
3, and this is when I really tried to play ranked competitively. I found my true love for custom lobbies in Halo, even though it was kind of always budding since the beginning. But Halo 3 was just a streamlined
So I've never heard myself on 0.25 speed. I sound hilarious.
experience. That's the best way to put it. And it had something to offer for everyone. I remember having tons of friends of all kinds and skill levels to play with and join in on. I was able to reach rank 45 playing as a solo player, as my friends weren't good enough to get really past like rank 30. And it was a huge personal achievement for me since it was the first time I set up my own competitive goal despite growing up doing martial arts tournaments and competing there. After Halo 4 came out, I was all over the game trying to be a professional player, training as much as I could pre-launch and then at launch and on. Halo 4 though, like for many other players, for me just didn't feel like Halo and left a hollow experience for me, which made me quit only months into the game for the first time of a Halo title ever. Now to put that into perspective.
Okay, like, quick story on Halo 4 and my journey in Halo 4. I was like literally like full on depressed when Halo 4 was out. So like playing Halo was like the only thing I had going for me at the time. And so it was like a really bad spot because it was like the worst Halo that came out. And so like I'm playing this Halo and I'm like hating it and everyone else is too. And I wasn't doing very good in life. So it was, yeah, I was... Anytime I think of Halo 4, it doesn't bring back
I didn't like Reach as much as the others, especially with the abilities in Bloom, but I liked it way more than Halo 4, and played it for years. As the timeline now progresses onward, I will give some of my personal thoughts concerning each Halo and my involvement with them. 343 would continue on trucking with their second Halo title, Halo 5, releasing in the fall of 2015. Halo 5 would prove to be an interesting story because although there were many complaints about the game's storyline from players, it wasn't nearly as bad or hated as the previous Halo. That being said, it still wasn't very good because it didn't feel like the story of Halo necessarily. I mean, 343 even admitted that they should have featured the franchise's protagonist, Master Chief, more, and that they made some mistakes in Halo 5's narrative. On top of that, although it had a shaky launch due to the expectations of this, once people got more time to explore and play the multiplayer experiences, the Halo community would actually end up becoming kind of divided on the game. Halo 5 would introduce more movement options than ever before in a Halo game, including aerial-based movement. This would raise the skill level incredibly of Halo 5, but would alienate many casual players. This is why the community is ultimately divided on Halo 5, because if you like competitive Halo, there's a good chance that you liked Halo 5. And if you were a part of the massive majority casual audience for Halo, sorry, I know that stings, but it's just true, you were sort of...
So, right there, what I snuck in was basically like, a lot of people that are fans of Halo think incorrectly, and I'm a competitive fan, so I'm here to tell you, like, that it is a competitive game. It isn't. It's a casual game. But it worked competitively because there's so many things that work about the game. And that's something that, like, Halo 5 is such an interesting game because I think it, in hindsight, it really did set the stage for what Halo Infinite was going to be a lot more than I thought it was. And did, but I also think that it was the example of 343 finally saying, you know what, let's just make our own game. And some people like that. And some people didn't.
Given the subpar product. Now, I will go against the grain and say that I actually enjoyed Warzone and Halo 5 Guardians. This was a 12 vs 12 game mode that featured vehicles and unlockables. The problem is, it was kind of hard to enjoy with it being drenched in the stench of over-monetization. I mean, check out this video that they tried to scrub from the internet that somebody sent me to sum up how suddenly Master Chief in the Halo franchise and Halo 5's era was seemingly pimped out like a cheap salesman.
Think of rec packs like a collection of virtual trading cards. Each pack contains cards or items like assassination animations, stances, weapons, armor, visors, helmets, and vehicles.
I thought this was relevant to the show because it set the tone for what was to come next with Halo Infinite, and to be honest, it shouldn't have led to as much surprise for those that were familiar with it. Halo 5 would sell a little more than Halo 4, but less than Halo Reach. But these were still quite respectable numbers. Halo 5 overall, I think I will remember positively, though flawed. Halo 5 feels like 343 Studios really tried to commit to making their own Halo this time, which was commendable in many ways, and it actually came out pretty cool. I just think that it felt like, to me, Halo 5 was trying a little too hard to be an arena shooter, which is why when games like Splitgate came out later on, it kind of felt like a better version of it.
To explain what I meant about that, it's because games like Splitgate aren't restricted by aspects of trying to be a Halo game. They can just be an arena game without any of the same like bad parts, if that makes sense.
The creative director and head of Halo 4, Josh Holmes, would leave the company December 2016, a year after the launch of Halo 5. Josh would go on to co-found the company Midwinter Entertainment, which would publish many different video games with some levels of success, but fail their only in-house developed title that I covered on the series already, Scavengers. The next month, 343 would lose one of their major producers, Dan Ayub. I want to try to talk about the impact of each departure as much as possible, obviously, and where they go, but sometimes some are going to be harder than most. Dan seems just like a producer. He might be a great one, but he doesn't have a large public presence and he doesn't get talked about much from any of my information or from any of my context. He would go on to be a big-time suit at Wizards of the Coast, so it's hard to imagine it was a negative move for him despite long history that he had at Microsoft outside of 343 Studios. With a few of the larger 343 devs departing, there was still enough of the original core squad around. 343 would continue to do what they do, which was create Halo games, and announce their newest addition in the Halo universe and the subject for this video. Halo Infinite would be announced at E3 in 2018. But things were different this time. 343 Studios didn't just lose some of their major talent, they were losing developers in general. Whether from downsizing or contracts expiring or whatever. 2018 would signify the time that 343 Studios would transition largely to contract workers, restricted to 18-month cycles. This would prove to be a crucial error in many ways going forward. Besides just lack of quality and quality control, it created an issue of a lack of unified vision, and a team that seemed confused on what it wanted to accomplish. Professionals generally can push past these issues, but it has to come from the top down, and 343 Studios even early on had some cracks forming in their leadership that likely could have resulted in problems like this one. According to estimates, contract workers made up over half of 343 Studios and Halo Infinite's team. Original developers in general, actual salaried, non-contract developers would continue to shrink as well. I think there should be something to be said about the fact that this could be related to 343 Studios paying below the standard in Washington, which has a high cost.
Yeah, which is like something that like people aren't gonna talk about that a lot, because it's not like a sexy subject. But if you can't pay the right kind of talent, you can't afford them, right? Like, it doesn't matter what you're going to try to do at the end. You're literally trying to make something without the right kinds of people. And, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't work like that. Now, I'm actually going to slow it down and I'm going to skip ahead some, because there's probably some chapters that I really want to specifically cover. I know I said we'd react, but to be honest, since there's only just a couple of us, you guys are better off watching this on your own, because right now you're just getting the behind the scenes. Behind the scenes is cool though, but it's like interrupted. And I thought that I could find a way around that, but to be honest, the same thing exists with fights where it's just so hard to react to them unless you're reacting to them live without the commentary. But in this case, since I'm making a commentary, it's kind of the point, you know? So thanks for educating me on that, guys. But obviously,
engine. The previous engine, Blam, not only had the majority of its engineers and original designers leave the company, 343 Studios wasn't choosing to work with people who were, for whatever reasons, familiar with it. Now,
right, and so this is a big issue where you have this engine and suddenly all of your most talented people leave and you're supposed to just be able to fix that problem right away. And it's just really actually hard to fix that problem, especially if you're working on an engine that is very unique and has a lot of technical depth. So to be clear and be fair, I actually don't think what they had to do was necessarily easy. But again, we're talking about the biggest and baddest in the industry. If somebody can figure it out, it has to be them.
now I can speculate as to why, but I was told by a contact who worked on the project that there was a lot of technical debt in the Blam engine.
See, there you go. So it's just too hard to work with, right? And the other thing that really happens throughout the video and story is going to be the leadership problems.
Very obvious and prominent, as I had been told this in other cases by prior employees from Microsoft, that you have a color badge if you are a long-term employee, and it's really hard to fire a Microsoft badged employee. You have another color badge if you're a temp worker, and from a temp worker perspective, in my sources from a temp worker, it very much feels like you are a temp worker. These are two kinds of employee. There's two kinds of suits though. They're similar to this, but it's more so based on their level of seniority within Microsoft itself, which is a large part of the problem really. Some suits were nearly untouchable because they had roots and ties to Microsoft. No matter what would happen, they would always have a company and a place to shift to.
See, this is a problem because they're not nearly as invested and don't care nearly as much about the company and the game, only from success, metrics. So basically they're good. They can just go get hired somewhere else. I mean, think about Bonnie Ross. Like, she led the company for the past 14 years or whatever it is, and yet still got a job at Microsoft. And that's because that's just how Microsoft works. It rewards people that are there for long periods of time, and it always has been that way. What do you think about people saying that Halo Infinite wasn't a huge success? The live service of the game is like the gold standard. What? I don't know if you're trolling Salt Miner, but no, literally nobody says that. Everyone says that it was a huge success initially, but actually says that the live service part is probably
The others had
worst part of Halo, without a question. So I talk about throughout this section how a bunch of people leave the company, and that contributes heavily to the game just not performing very well, because you're shuffling leadership, your vision's changing, you don't know what kind of game you're making anymore. It becomes a problem, right? Especially when the biggest leader, Chris Lee, departs.
Lee departs 343 Studios. So Chris Lee's departure would most definitely affect Halo Infinite's development going forward, changing as much as one of my sources reports, the very direction of the game. And an hour.
So yeah, that you know, was undersold, I think, because his success, and MCC people felt like, yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be successful in this. And then he suddenly left in Halo Infinite, and people were, you know, didn't really remark about it. And it's funny because, like, people turn their blinders on as a game's going to release, and it's because they want the game to release and they don't want all this negative stuff to happen. But Halo Infinite had a great example of that, where it was like anytime negative criticism tried to spring out early on, people would all collectively shut it down. Hey, give them more time. Hey, come on. And it's weird because, like, when doing this timeline, you think about it and you're like, wow, they lost at least like 4 of their major developers before the game ever came out. One of them, according to my sources, was essentially like the main mastermind behind the team. So it's like, no wonder why this game didn't do well, right? But we don't always see that stuff as it's happening. We don't know how significant it's going to be.
Removed a blog post, 343 Studios would talk about their design philosophy regarding progression December 2020th. We want everyone to play the game in a healthy manner that they enjoy. We're not trying to build a grind machine that burns everyone out in an attempt to get more game time from them. Halo.
Wait, whose model is used by other people? Because Infinite didn't bring anything like, monetization-wise, Halo Infinite adds nothing new, literally at all, in any conceivable way. It's actually, the ironic part is it's not just nothing new, it's not even a good monetization system. Meaning, even if they were trying to make massive amounts of money off of you, it's not even a good system. That's the absurdity of it, is even if they want to make money, they actually can't really. Their shop is not that good. It's the reason why every time they constantly would try to raise their prices, they would get pushback. And it's because the kind of shop and design that they created, especially for a Halo game, was always going to create that kind of reaction. So I'll be honest, I have no idea what you're trying to say. Because yeah, not only was Halo Infinite not a unique game as a service title, it's arguably one of the worst examples of one, and probably is the largest contributing factor to why it failed. You think that that's what the point? Well, obviously Des isn't the person that asked this question, but thanks for taking it, Des. I think that's what this is. I think that's what the point is. They tried aping another system and they did it badly. I think that that's true, but I think that it's because of Halo 5. They were in this position where they tried to over monetize that game. It didn't really work. They got pushback, so they were like, okay, well, what now? And because they didn't really know what else to pivot to, I guess they just went with whatever was working at the time. Game as a service, like battle pass systems, and they copied off of them. The problem is that the system doesn't work in Halo. And it doesn't work in Halo because it wasn't in Halo previously, and it wasn't in Halo previously, and ever since it hasn't been in Halo previously, the past couple Halos, it's been worse for it. Less customization, worse monetization. So for Halo fans, like, less customization, less options, doesn't even necessarily mean more options in the store. So the case of Halo Infinite, it's a problem of the shop, but it's also a problem of the design, of how they tried to monetize a game for an audience that has certain kind of expectations of what they're expecting, right? What they expect their game to be and what their game will give them.
Infinite needs to be a place where we all look forward to. In case of Halo Infinite, the Battle Pass, the system was based on challenges. These challenges were randomly selected for the day and would require unique wins in particular game modes using a particular queue.
See, to that person's point, if that is their point, is that this was the design of one of their lead designers. His idea was to take the systems, I'm assuming, that were working, and then make it Halo. And not only did it not work, it was horrible. And almost everybody hates the challenge system. So that goes to show you that, you know, developers and designers like Jerry Hook, who people cried when he left, in reality was one of the guys behind that system, right? So again, it's a big reason why I constantly mention to people, take developers seriously, evaluate their work, and love their products. But like, you have to do all of those. You can't just do one. You can't just say, hey, I love you, and I love these developers, and they're always great, because they're probably not. And you can't also say like, oh no, like give these guys enough chances and they'll do it right. And it's like, because I don't know about you guys, but like when I do something wrong in a video, it gets called out immediately. Everyone gives me shit in the comments. There's nothing that I can do about it. Like, I don't like suddenly be like, no, but like for real, like, you know, whatever else, like you shouldn't actually criticize me like that because like people make mistakes. It's like, no, you should, and you did, and that should always be the case because it helps us make better things. Halo has this weird like reverence where people almost don't want to insult it because they feel like they're insulting Halo itself. In reality, you're not. You're insulting the company that's running Halo. Halo is not an entity that's alive, right? It's an IP. It's one that gets used by other people. And that was Bonnie Ross's whole idea. Her whole idea was to create the Star Wars of Halo. And I don't think that that's a bad idea, especially because the Halo books are actually pretty good. The problem is that she was spearheading it basically at the same time she was trying to do Halo Infinite on a new engine with all the problems involved, including a TV show. So, by the way, any questions people have for me about the video, because I'm gonna go sooner than later, like I said, because I'm still feeling pretty sick, and how it's affecting me is I just feel tired, to be honest. Like, I appreciate that. Yeah, we're just reacting to parts of it right now. I really think it's best everyone watch it on their own. The Battle Pass system allows you to retroactively do previous seasons for ones that you have not been around for. That's a pretty cool system. I can't hate on that, honestly. I think that's a great idea. But the Battle Pass system is almost universally hated. So it's like, maybe that's what the guy wanted me to celebrate, is like, that's a cool thing, but it's like, but it's a cool thing, a part of a shitty system we never wanted. So it's like, I could celebrate it, but I'm like, I don't want it. You're good. It's I think it's either like something like congestion related, because I feel it here, right? Like pneumonia, maybe sinuses. Hopefully not COVID, because I've heard people saying it's more active again. But like I've been resting a lot, and I definitely have been sleeping more than normal, so I can tell it's affecting me. But I'm getting better by the day. And I did this literally at the height of my voiceover, so I'm glad I got it done in time. Thoughts on favorite game controller as an input for competitive multiplayer on a game that a lot of people play? Oh, okay. You mean for Halo? So I'll explain this. All right, so there's always going to be some times where I'm going to go against the grain. And one of those times is going to be right now. As I spill water all over myself. Anyway. A big complaint when Halo Infinite came out, because it was coming out on PC as well, was people felt like the PC version was inferior to the controller version, like the mouse and keyboard versus the controller version. And there were a couple of reasons for this. A couple of people did some testing, and they found that the tracking on the controller was much better. A couple other people did some testing, and they found out that the tracking is also effective. And sorry, but this is what most people don't probably understand, but the majority of the tracking problems actually comes from melee. People think it's your aim from far away. Your aim doesn't magnetize far away. That's not how auto aim works, right? Auto aim in Halo works when you're up close. So the problem that people actually have in reality, without necessarily even knowing it or being aware of it, or the problem that they think they have, I'll explain that in a second, is that they think that they'll be able to hit someone with a melee and they're slower to actually react. And so therefore, since Halo is very much built on that concept, you're kind of inferior to a mouse and key, or sorry, to a controller player. The truth of the matter is that the controller player is always going to be able to do that easier than you, because it was made for that. Now, take that aside, there were some problems. The problem was that they needed to tweak a little bit of the auto aim for PCs. Now, guess what happened as soon as they tweaked it the first time? It was too OP. That's the problem. Like, people want to act like there's, like, not you, Cameron, but like other people want to act like there's not a complex issue here, but there is. If we build a PC game, or we build a Halo game solely for mouse and keyboard arena style environments, you're not building the same Halo game anymore. And that might be offensive to other people, but I don't care, because the game was originally created as an Xbox exclusive. So like, it was always a console game, right? It just also was on PC, but never really like appealed to players there. So some people will feel like, well, that's an issue for me because, well, they tweaked the auto aim later on, by the way, and ended up being better. According to all of the reports I've ever heard from anybody who plays it on mouse and keyboard, which is not a very large amount of players, they say that the changes are much better and improved. Now, the controversial part that I'm actually going to get to is the part that this is a problem in all of competitive gaming and online gaming, period. Which is that when something becomes a narrative, if it blows up as a narrative, people make that such a big deal that it's almost bigger than it actually is. And I'm going to, shatter everyone's bubble, but I was doing this at the time too, which is that the truth of the matter is that if you guys think that the controller makes that much of a difference, you are probably not, okay, let me rephrase it. You are not good enough for it to make a difference. I will repeat. You are not good enough of a player for a controller to make a difference for you. That's just a literal fact. And like, it's a weird thing that like, I get it, like, we're MMO players, we want to optimize, we want to have everything as good as we possibly can. And by the way, as far as I understand, Pierre was in charge, but was not the one that led the team, by the way. And multiple people have told me that. And including Pierre even says, we led the team to success, but everyone says it was Chris Lee. Like, he doesn't even take the credit himself, which I think is pretty interesting. Not that Chris Lee does either, but the point is that even amongst the people that are working with them, they were still giving Chris the credit. Like, nobody, including, Chris or even Pierre himself, was saying that it's Pierre that did it. So I think that that's pretty interesting. And it either speaks to the leadership and ability of Pierre. Maybe he's not that kind of person. Maybe he was in charge of everything and was the real reason it worked that way that it worked. But he never said that. He never told anybody that. And I think that that's actually probably a testament to him and his leadership. Now, if he just happened to be the person that was in charge as Chris Lee was running everything, which is what everyone has said so far, then he still gets to accept credit. I mean, he was still in charge, right? Like, it's kind of like if Bonnie Ross was the head whenever Reach came out, she still would have gotten credit for Reach. You know what I'm saying? Like, even if she didn't do Reach, they would have given her that credit. Like, as a leader, they would have given her that credit. I think that's actually, in hindsight, a bit of a mistake, is before they transitioned, they probably should have kept the team on Reach before they made them make a new Halo game. But anyway, yeah, so to further my tangent about PC and mouse and keyboard, because this is an important thing. I'm sounding like I'm making fun of it, but in reality, I'm memeing it because a lot of interesting things happen when you talk about things like input controls and like preparing for something. And it's that some people feel like if it's preparation based, it's not fair. And it really isn't at the end of the day. MMOs aren't fair, right? But arena games and shooters are, right? Everyone shows up and has the same tools, so to say, right? There's something to love about that. The games always feel pretty fair, right? And balanced. At least, I think I've always thought that that's like a cool, unique aspect of Halo, is that it always feels like, relatively speaking, it's a balanced game, right? Like, yes, there's aspects that are very silly and crazy, but never to the extent of other games that we've seen. Like, Overwatch or Heroes of the Storm or even other like MOBA games like League and stuff like that. Like Halo never went that wacky in terms of what power it gave you, but it does allow you within the context and confines of the game itself and the engine to do some pretty crazy things. And so I think that like everyone is excited about Halo and they want to be performing at the highest levels. But whenever this craze was coming out, I intentionally, about mouse and keyboard versus controller, I intentionally stopped playing on the controller. In fact, half of the clips in this video that are BXRs are on mouse and keyboard in Halo 2. Anybody else right now, Google or try to find somebody who's doing mouse and keyboard BXRs, you won't find them. The point that I'm making is not just because I can do it on whatever platform. The point I'm making is that because I'm really good at Halo, it doesn't matter what controller or what device I'm playing. I can do good at either of them for different reasons. They have different strengths. Do you see what I'm saying? So I'm speaking about this not as somebody who's just being elitist as a controller player, but I actually have clips early on when I made it to Onyx on OpenQ. I did it on mouse and keyboard. So again, I'm demonstrating to people that I'm backing up what I'm saying. I'm not just saying that the mouse and keyboard stuff with the controller stuff was overblown. It was overblown. But I'm saying that it was overblown because of the nature of competitive gaming. At the same time, they actually did need to add changes to it. So because they had to actually change it, I think it created this narrative in everybody's head that they're like, oh, I can't beat these guys. They're too good because they have mouse and keyboard or because they have a controller or because of the auto aim. But in reality, like, again, back then I was gunning everybody on mouse and keyboard before they added any of the auto aim changes. So, and again, it just goes back to your range and your pinpoint accuracy on a mouse is always going to be better. But in Halo, that's not necessarily the best thing because it's not a game always about accuracy. It's a game about crosshair placement, communication, and positioning, right? So if you position correctly and have your crosshair placed, you're not needing to necessarily tweak as much, right? And so that's like the whole idea that goes into the concept of. So long story short, could they have fixed the PC controllers a little bit, controls a bit better so people didn't feel like it was like as noticeable? Yes. The bigger problem is that after they fixed it, I think they should have came out and actually addressed it a lot more. Or probably at least talked about it in a more competitive context, because I have seen probably 100 plus comments about this. And again, no offense to people that had this as an issue, the vast majority of you aren't good enough for it to ever have been a problem in the first place. But I think because of the optics of it all and the fact that they didn't do a good job of, you know, essentially making their first impression on PC, it gave people that sort of first taste in their mouth because maybe they weren't Halo fans originally, or this was their first time playing in a long time. You see what I'm saying? So like, I'm not trying to say it's super easy because they have to make it for mouse and keyboard, right? They have to. But at the same time, they were never going to make it just for mouse and keyboard because their majority of their audience was always on controller. So it's like a damned if you do, damned if you don't. But I think that it's in a good spot now. Like if you guys go play Halo Infinite, the PC controls are pretty good. Thank you, Mark. It makes it more plug and play friendly, especially as someone with not a lot of game time. Honestly, I downloaded Halo Infinite to see how's it going, and man, the game is still not balanced. The last time I played MCC, it felt more balanced. Game sucks. I thought I was like really far behind everybody because I was reading these top comments and I was getting like very nuanced stuff, and then I scroll down and I just see Ronkel's just saying, game sucks. It's like, fair enough. But anyway, not to go back to what I was saying about Chris Lee and the studio head, Pierre, who I don't remember what his first or last name is, but he's currently the studio head now. Is people said that, it's weird, like the revisionist history about the Halo MCC franchise is really interesting. So first off, Halo MCC was supposed to be Halo on PC and Xbox, like every Halo, right? All the way up to Halo 4. Remastered the first one, remastered the second one, not the third one because we didn't have enough time and budget, but like we did everything else. And when it dropped, it sucked. It was glitchy. I was playing it, so I know. It was glitchy, queues didn't work, people were getting banned for shit, like they weren't even leaving, they were getting banned. It was just a horrible experience. And so during that time, the reason why I don't buy the whole Pierre being the studio head is that he already was, or rather already was the leader on MCC. But it didn't go well until I heard Chris Lee being involved in the project. So I don't know if that's maybe like whoever mentioned that you worked and had more experience with Pierre himself and maybe know what contributions he had. But as far as I've been told and heard, it's the other way around, where it's like one joins the picture and ends up making everything smooth. Doesn't mean you take away from the person that's in charge, but clearly means that the other person probably needed some help or assistance. I'm a mouse and keyboard player, and IMO's in a good spot now. I think it is, genuinely. I've heard that they added friction to help. That would help somewhat. And I'm talking about weapon and movement balance here, but I see it. Well, weapon and movement balance has never been changed. I'm not sure what people would mean about that. Like, again, like, I'm trying to figure out how to talk about this because, like, when I made this video, I made it for the general Halo fan base. But if I'm going to talk about very specific things like the movement and how things like function in a Halo perspective, I'm going to talk about it in a very elitist perspective, to come from that perspective of like, well, what does this actually translate to? And I think that, like, largely speaking, the mouse and keyboard controller aiming issues aren't really a thing. Like, it was a thing slightly, but it's more so a thing because it's a thing that's always existed. Halo has always given advantage to controller players. That's existed since the beginning of Halo, including Halo 1, which was on PC. People forget, it was on PC. Even back then, it was still more advantage to play with your controller. So nothing has changed there. And that's not me trying to just, like, swipe the controversy. It's just more that, like, past a point, you have to realize with the general fan base, they're kind of delusional on like why they lost the game. I lost the game because the controls. It's like, you just lost the game because I played mouse and keyboard and I didn't even like the controls and I still got Onyx. Okay, so I was never held back because of my elo or because of the control scheme, or, bro, if I was really uncontrolled, man, you guys would get the hands. It's like, no, like, it's an issue, but hopefully you guys can see through my sarcasm, I'm also trying to talk about sometimes people get a little bit italicized about it, okay? They talk about it like it's the reason that they lost the gunfight. In reality, in Halo, it's 90% of the time not why you're gonna lose a gunfight. The game has nothing to do with fucking aiming. Like, maybe with your pistol, right, or a sniper, but like, the game has very little to do in the way of aiming. But maybe that's another thing that they should have communicated more, right? Because if enough players are complaining about it, maybe they should say, hey, Halo, we're known for doing it this kind of way. Let me demonstrate how we do it. Yeah, I mean, of course, controls and inputs are always going to restrict you. The point that I'm making is just, this is not CSGO, right? If this is CSGO, a controller never will ever have a chance against fucking mouse and keyboard unless they gave them like auto aim, right? But this isn't CSGO. Like, what are we talking about here? We're talking about a game that has almost no recoil. We're talking about a game that you can spray and pray almost every single gun. Like, you see what I'm saying? So that was not one of the criticisms that I was very serious about. Now, there were some pretty big criticisms about the game in its campaign, and, you know, I didn't go that hard on the campaign because I found it to be pretty much just passable. I think it's good enough and playable enough, and I think that there's enough there to enjoy the beginning parts of it, especially. But you immediately feel like there's just something more that's supposed to be there. And so I don't think that that's enough to make the game fail in its own right, but maybe in the context of comparing it to the previous or the first original Halos, it's like, yeah, it wasn't that great of a plot. What else? talking about the Halo TV show failing epically. Talking about increasing microtransaction prices in the store. So this is the other thing that, again, when people start to tell you, hey, feel sorry for this company, why would I feel sorry for a company that's still increasing prices? And for people that don't understand, why does this, what? This doesn't make any sense. Like, I'll make it simple for you guys. When corporations are involved on things, right? They set and dictate how things are done, right? So Microsoft dictates how things need to be done for 343 Studios. And so to put this in a context of corporation context, like I explained this a little bit in the video, but like corporations, when they make moves, guys, they're not trying to be likable all the time. I know it sounds weird because it's like when you're a small business, you always want to be likable. You want everyone, like Ben & Jerry's started as a small business that everyone loved, right? That's a great way to start a business. The problem with a corporation is that they can't afford to be liked by everybody because they're trying to sell to everybody. So it's literally impossible. So what they do is try to make themselves as appealing to everybody as much as they can. They'll join every single cause. They'll say they care about every group of people suddenly. They will, they'll virtue signal, whatever, right? Well, something else they do is actually called kind of like calculated controversy. Or you can think about it in another context of calculated risk, which is that these corporations will make moves knowing that they're going to piss people off. They know that. But they're making that move with the idea that there's going to be a payoff regardless. And when you look at Halo Infinite, I have never seen a more corporate product, to be honest. So many aspects of Halo Infinite look like corporatism, essentially just kind of run rampant. And that's unfortunate because it's my favorite series, especially shooter series, but unfortunate because if you try and apply a corporate mentality to video games, over time, there's always going to be a fallout, right? Maybe sometimes it works. Sometimes when you commercially build a game, it works really well, right? And other times it doesn't. And when it doesn't, it fails super epically. And I think that that's what we have here with Halo Infinite. Is one of the highest profile failures we've probably ever seen, right? Halo fans, fix the game, 343 Studios. What, you want us to make sure the store works and everything is poorly priced? Yeah, no, I mean, that's the point. Exactly, Mark. You get what I'm trying to say. It's like trying to give me the sob story about trust in me, I'm the little business, but then sitting out there right outside trying to sell to everyone you can. It's like, well, you don't have the demand and you can't fix your issues first, then you shouldn't be trying to attract anyone else and raise the prices on anything. I don't know about you, Salt Miner, and how it affects you in the Middle East, but I have been told by multiple people that Halo Infinite gives them more issues depending on where they're located in the world. I'm located in an incredibly central place, and I have been crashing on Halo Infinite since the game came out. I have had desync issues since the game came out. So needless to say, I don't need any convincing about that. Sad but true. Like, so much of my experiences with Halo Infinite were firsthand. And maybe that makes the video a bit more personal, right? I've never seen a company as tone deaf as 343. You know what? I've thought of it as tone deaf before, but I've thought of something else. It feels like it's ran almost like a shell company. Does that make sense? Like it's Microsoft, but it's not really Microsoft. So it's like they can almost like be like, yeah, but it's 343, you know? And like pawn it off on 343. I guess what I'm trying to say is that when 343 does a good job, 343, woohoo, when they don't do a good job. Well, it's because leadership, it's because Microsoft, it's because... And so what I'm trying to say is that really the problem with 343 and them being tone deaf is that they aren't tone deaf in the sense that they don't know what's going on. I think it's more in the sense that they are delusional and reject reality. Like, I'm sorry, I don't know if that makes me a meanie head or whatever, but like, I'm saying like literally like in business, like when you're supposed to take things seriously, even publicly, you're supposed to tell people, hey, we messed up, we made some mistakes, let's do this better. I have never seen a single good 343 apology, and I've never seen a single good apology or please believe us from one of their leaders. And that shocked me. When I went back and I was doing all of this content, like, I was like, wait a minute. I kept getting comments from people telling me, but 343 did say sorry. It's like, shit, my bad. Did they? Did they? And I went back and, no, they actually didn't. In fact, it's hilarious because one of the articles that I cited, Bonnie is talking about the problems and how they're going to improve things. The guy that wrote the article literally then says right after, but then she never actually elaborates and says what those things are. And then the article continues on like normal. So meaning Bonnie came out, but a press release talking about what we need to do, these are what the issues were, and doesn't even say what the issues were. Like, you can't make this shit up, bro. Like, that's not tone deaf. That's like full on deaf. Like, it's I don't understand it. Like, and the amount of victory lapping that they do too. Again, that's why people want me to feel sorry for them. Why? They were celebrating the slip space engine before it failed, right before they displayed it to everybody, and it was considered a massive failure at the E3 stage. They were celebrating it behind closed doors. We did our own engine. We did it our way. Woo! And it's like, why am I supposed to celebrate this exactly? Everyone from 343 has been thrown under the bus by Microsoft. I'm actually going to push back and say it's the opposite. I think that because a lot of the 343 leadership were embedded in Microsoft, it kept them untouchable. And it's a reason why nothing really happened for such a long time. Halo Infinite failed so much it lowered their bottom line though, which tells you like, not just because it was Halo, but because it actually moved their entirety of their money. Something had to be done. So if anything, I feel like Microsoft has been overall pretty fair, but the Microsoft leaders that are in charge of Halo Infinite, which are also on 343 Studios, it's complicated, guys. I know, they have handlers, essentially. Think of 343 as having handlers. So if you want to blame people, my sources were not exaggerating when they say you have to blame the handlers. Because who the fuck else is controlling all this shit? It's not the 343 Studio devs. They have very little control, and there's not even that many of them. So in reality, you realize it's coming from the suits who are also involved in development. And that's why I made it a point to talk about them in this video, because sorry, nobody ever does. Nobody talks about how Frank O'Connor is called a Bungie dev when all he did was write a community post. Why does no one ever talk about that? That the guy that was considered the director of development never developed a game. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, and again, like, if this feels like it's like a personal thing to me, it is. It's because when I got to New World and got to play and test their game out, guys, I went into Amazon Game Studios expecting all of this sort of stuff that I'm talking about right now to not exist. And unfortunately, I ran into all of the same stuff. And the problem is because many of these industries right now, especially corporations, don't know how to hire talent. Excuse me. So they're hiring talent that has like the resume. They probably even have the talent, but not for that specific game, right? And not for that specific universe. And I think that that's the real story. It's not that 343 is evil. It's that they had no idea what they were doing, no idea what they were looking for, and didn't try to fix any of those problems in that process. So that's bad, but it's not like they're evil. It's more like they're just kind of like, what are we doing? That's what it felt like. And that's the final thing I'll say about it, honestly, because I gotta go, guys. I'm not feeling so hot. I'm okay. I'm just breathing like shit. But is that if 343 had just came out and said, you know what, we're gonna bring in creative affinity, right? Creative affinity or creative assembly. I'm blanking on names right now. That's not a good sign. The guys that helped do Halo 2 and 3 brought them in, said, hey, make this feel like Halo and we'll build a game around it. That would have probably been better than whatever they did. And that's because both Halo 4 and Halo Infinite had 2 different versions, and the 2 different versions were widely different from each other. And so that's a recurring theme with 343, is that they'll develop their games with like 2 completely different versions of the game and end up going with the one that arguably in many cases, according to my sources, is worse. So that's their decisions they're making, but because they're in a bad situation. So when you're in a bad situation and you're nervous, you make worse decisions. So it's compacted with 343 because they've been allowed to continue to make more games and create more problems. So I think that the solution is not just to like kill 343 or whatever. It's like literally like start it back with the same leadership that you had some level of success in, but then bring in a bunch of other new leadership. Don't leave that leadership in there and keep them as the sole leader, de facto, whatever the hell guys. The other thing is that bring in people that are going to take risk. I think that's what the Halo franchise needs. It sounds weird because it's like, yeah, but you're just complaining about the game being so different. When I mean taking risk, I mean taking risk in ways that are still Halo. Like, make a Halo game, but make it take risk, right? Make a good Halo game. Make a Zelda-like Halo game. I think that that's probably what's next, or what should be done next for the Halo franchise, is just go back to the roots. Take your time. But I don't know what's going to happen. I'm eager to see, but I'm very scared at the same time. And yeah, it never feels good when you love the series that's in turmoil, right? Even though I make this video and these videos and whatever else, it's like, I don't enjoy it, you know? I love Halo. I want Halo to work. But, you know, bad development is bad development. Bad leadership is bad leadership. Mistakes are mistakes. Bad luck is bad luck, because that's a thing too. It's not like they just suck, right? It's a combination of all of that. I was gonna watch it, but I'm good. I watched some of it, but I just don't feel that good. Like, congestion, for those that haven't experienced that, especially when you're a vocalist, feels like you're trying to breathe out of a straw. I already have breathing problems, so it's even worse for me. So on that note, I'm going to head out, but please go watch the Halo video. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know your thoughts. If you disagree with me, if you agree with me, where do you think the Halo franchise should go next? Where do you think I should go next, besides Fly for Fun, which is the next death of a game, by the way, guys? And yeah, nothing else to say other than goodbye, have a good weekend, and take care.